Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Kim with Creative Crafticality, and today is my fourth video of the Dollar Tree Junk Journal Challenge. Today I will be making my cover and my tassel for the junk journal. What I'm using for the base of my journal are these file folders. I'll just use one file folder for it, and then the rest of it I'll use for other items in the book. And then I had a pack of these two pot holders. I'm going to use this on the cover. And then I'm going to cut lemons out of this towel. I also have this fabric that came from the Dollar Tree. Everything's from the Dollar Tree, obviously. So I'll have this, and then I'm going to use this paper that I made. If you have not seen my paper video, I'll link that down below. And then for the tassel, I'll use some of the fabric and then some of these ribbons here, as well as the yellow yarn and the yellow beads. So just follow along here if you want to know how to make a journal cover using a file folder. It's actually really easy and it turns out really cute.
Starting out with my file folder, I'm cutting it down to 8 3/4, and then I'm going to take and score a third line at the bottom of the folder. You'll see when you open it up that there's 2 scored lines already. I went over another ½ inch or 1/4 inch and scored it, so there were 3 score lines. And now I'm just going to cut a little strip here to reinforce the center of the file folder. This is where my spine is going to be, and I'll use some tacky glue to glue down there. I just wanted to make it a little more sturdy, and then I'm going to be covering both sides with fabric. Now line up one of the score lines and score at 5 1/2. Turn it around, do the same, 4 1/2, and then I'm just folding my 2 ends in, and that makes little tuck spots. I cut a piece of my fabric just slightly larger than the whole back side of the cover, or it's the front and the back, that whole middle section. Now I put tacky glue down on the front, just spread it all around, and take your fabric and smooth it over that section, and then just work your way onto the spine and then on the back of the cover. I'm also going to be sewing around the edges on this, but it's always easier for it to stay in place if you glue it down. Smooth it out, make sure there aren't any bubbles or anything like that. And then on the inside, I cut another piece of paper that was as tall as the cover, but not quite as long, because I'm going to be sewing those 2 flaps down, so I didn't need to use all that fabric. And I am going to be cutting this little section off too, so I can use that on something else in the book. Just make sure that you have enough to go on both sides, and I was just putting a little bit of glue on each side, so I made sure that I glued it down in the right spot. And I'm basically doing the same as what I did on the outside, just putting my glue down, smushing it all over, and then placing my fabric down on top. Now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew all the way around on the outside, and then I also sewed on the inside part of the spine. I'm also going to be adding some of this paper. I made this paper. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link for it, but I'm adding that on both flaps just as an extra detail. And then I'm also going to be sewing around on top of the flap, and then I'm sewing the flaps down to make the tuck spots. Now for the front cover, I'm using this pot holder, and I just wanted to show you how I cut it apart. You just pinch it together and use your scissors and then cut that piece all the way around. I did this already for the other, there's two pot holders that come, and I already did this on another one and have it sewn and everything. But I cut it and then I started pulling pieces away just to give it a fringed edge. I really like that look. And then I went to my sewing machine and I did a zigzag stitch with the yellow thread around just to add a little bit more detail. So here's the one that I already sewed. So on my cover, I want to put it sort of at an angle. And right now I'm just trying to decide what I want to put on the cover. I thought maybe I wanted this lace, but I ended up using the ribbon. So I'm going to make this a pocket. So I just put the glue on the bottom and on the sides, and then the part that flapped over onto the spine, I'm gluing that totally down. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to the pocket and smush it around and then fold it over and smooth it. And at this point you can adjust it if you need to. I didn't like the way that was looking. It didn't have enough of the writing on the front, so I moved it over just a little bit. And then I decided I wanted to go with this yellow ribbon. It sort of has a scallop edge on it. So I'm adding that along the bottom, about 1 inch above the bottom of the cover. And I'm going to go all the way around to the back. Just make sure it's pressed out nice and smooth, and then trim. And then I have this towel here, so I'm going to cut out one of the lemons to go on the front. I did notice that when you cut apart this microfiber towel, it does leave a bunch of little, not strings, but just little pieces, but it doesn't affect the cover, like it stays together for the cover. And I'll just add some glue on the bottom of my lemon and stick that down on the front. I want to add a little tag to that, so I took one of the pieces that I cut off of the file folder and I'm making that into a tag, and I'm going to use some of that paper on it too. And I went to my sewing machine and just did a zigzag stitch, but I'm also going to be cutting another niche out of the other side, so I used another piece of the file folder to do that, to trace and cut some so it just evens out both sides of the tag. And then I sewed around the tag and then punched it and used some more of that same ribbon to tie into the tag. I really like how that adds the ribbon onto the top. And then for another detail, I was playing around with these wood pieces, and I realized that that little wedge looks more like a watermelon. So I picked the slice and I just used some of the paint that I got at the Dollar Tree and painted the top of that. And what was nice with that tempera paint was that it was thin enough that I could still see the lines on the wood sticker. So I'm going to add some of the glitter glue to the center just as some detail, and then I also painted it all over. And then I used tacky glue and glued that down onto the top. And I really love how this just adds one other kind of texture and detail onto the front cover. Now I'm going to be using the binding that was around the pot holder. I had taken that off the other one, so I just wanted to show you there that it was that binding. And then I'm going to sew that piece to a piece of the fabric, the yellow fabric. And I had to go ahead and iron, and I was just showing you that I ironed the seam binding and the end of it burned, so just be careful. I got it on my iron and I had to scrape that off. So these aren't, it's not long enough to go all the way around the book like that, so I'm just going to be gluing two ends into both sides of the cover. I'm using my circle cutter and I'm cutting out a circle to cover, so to glue down my fabric strips. And this is a Creative Memory circle cutter. If you don't have one, you can just trace and cut your own circle out. I cut an edge off of the circle and cut the edges off of the fabric strip. And I'm just going to use my tacky glue and put glue on both sides and stick that down. And then put glue on the half circle there and stick that down on top, covering the whole end of the fabric tie. And I'll do the same on the other side. Just need to make sure that you line up your front and your back cover to make sure the ties are in the same place. Fortunately, with the tacky glue, there is room for error. You can adjust it later. It doesn't dry right away. I needed to move it down just a little bit. And then to add detail to the pockets, I'm cutting up the other lemon pot holders that I found at the Dollar Tree. This one I actually found later than when I found the first ones. So I'm just going to be fussy cutting out these lemons. And I'm going to add this to a piece of the leftover piece of the seam binding from the first pot holder, and then putting that on top of a piece of the yellow file folder to make a pocket. So on the front cover there's this pocket and then the side tuck. Just adding that piece of the seam binding and then using the tacky glue to add the lemon piece down too. And then I'll put tacky glue on 3 sides to make that a pocket. Now on the back, I'm just going to fussy cut another set of lemons here, and that will go directly down on the side tuck since that's a skinnier one.
So for the tassel, I decided just to go with the yarn because the journal is a little bit thinner than what I normally do, and I just wasn't liking all of the ribbons that I had to go, so I just thought I could do a simple yarn tassel, and I wanted to show you how to do that, so stick around and then I'll show you the whole cover with the tassel tied on.
I'm taking my yarn and my cell phone and I'm going to wrap the yarn around vertically 15 times. And then you need to take a piece about a foot long, stick it up through the top and do a tight double knot. That's to keep all your pieces together. And then along the bottom, just trim that off. And then take another piece about a foot long and tie it along the top to complete the tassel part. Just do a double knot. Make sure they're all pulled straight down so they're not like poking out or anything. And then evenly trim them off the top. And then I'm going to complete the tassel by putting 2 beads along the top, and then we'll put ribbon around where we tied it. So I put some glue on the ends of my yarn just to make it easier to stick through the beads, but I also have a paper clip here that I opened up a little bit and I just used that to shove the yarn through the hole, and then just pull it down. And then I did that with another bead. And then double knot that at the top. And then the last thing I did was take about 2 inches of the same ribbon and I glued that around where you did that second tie. And that is a pretty simple tassel. And what I did was I punched 2 holes in the spine along the top, and I'm just double knotting it on the inside. So super cute. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Give me a thumbs up if you did, leave me a comment and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. This is Kim with Creative Crafticality. Bye, God bless.